Greetings, I'm Richard Chambers, the President and CEO of the Institute of Internal Auditors. Thanks for joining me in another of my series on insights and advice, where I'm having conversations with leaders of the internal audit profession from around the world. And today I'm joined by a good friend whom I've known for a number of years and is probably well known to a number of you, Brian Christensen. Brian is the Executive Vice President and Global Leader for the Internal Audit practice at Protiviti, and he also serves as the President of the Internal Audit Foundation. Welcome, Brian.
Good morning, Richard. It's good to be with you.
Well, you know, Brian, you and I were talking last, I think, right about the time this pandemic really exploded here in the United States. And I know there for a few days before our GAM conference, we were talking daily. Since then, that's only been 2 months ago, but it almost seems 2 lifetimes ago. So much has happened. So much has impacted in what I consider to be the most disruptive events probably in a century. Let me ask you a question. What is your sense? You have the opportunity to see internal audit departments, internal audit practices around the world. What's your impression so far of how this profession has responded, or how has it reacted, or how is it navigating through this pandemic?
You know, Richard, that's a question that I get from a lot of stakeholders, audit committees, executives within companies, and CAEs themselves. And I think the good news is, as a profession, we're really stepping up. You know, investments have been made through organizations to really diversify the capabilities of what internal audit functions can deliver. And it's really wonderful to see that during these difficult times, those skills can really come to bear. Let me give you an example. I think we're all we're taken back by the shock and awe of what has transpired around the globe. And I know everyone has a different data set and where they may be at with what this pandemic has transpired upon them. But the interesting thing is internal audit is really stepping up. I think one area in particular is the ability to assess risk. I know you and I have talked for many years about the speed of risk in your most recent book, how people assess and look at things, but really the ability to be dynamic in assessing, maybe even agile in responding. Work programs are being adjusted. We're putting in the skill sets that are necessary. And I think when I work with the foundation, we're getting a lot of feedback from our practitioners. They're seeking more information of how they can go through and help and be even more relevant in these difficult times.
Well, it certainly sounds like your observations are similar to those of some of the other guests that I've had a conversation with the last few days. Let me ask you sort of a follow-on to that. Is there anything that jumps out at you, any specific examples that you would care to share of something innovative or really transformational that you've seen coming out of any of the internal audit departments that may be clients of yours?
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting things that are coming to the forefront, Richard. We've talked for many years at the foundation and within the profession about the next generation or the future of internal audit. And I think what's happened is we've seen an acceleration of tools, techniques, methodologies that can help us today. And let me give you a good example. Working with a global organization that has auditors stationed around the planet, we've seen that they have really gone to a one office type concept, the ability to work remotely. Maybe they didn't work that way in the past. They didn't think they had maybe the urgency or need to do that, but able to tilt up the audit function that someone in Frankfurt can be doing something that maybe previously had been done in the United States or in Asia Pac, and seeing that interaction and utilizing the advanced tools that are coming in. And some of those tools revolve around AI, data analytics, continuous monitoring. In these turbulent times, that is where an auditor can bring tremendous value, because the day-to-day stakeholders in running a business are really trying to put in place the things to survive in many instances. And the ability to provide real-time information around the clock with stakeholders, whether they're in all these various locations or others that I described, brings tremendous value to the business and to the board and audit committee themselves.
Well, I think you highlighted some of the things there that internal audit really had the opportunity to get its arms around, particularly leveraging technology more in carrying out its responsibilities. And I'm glad to hear you saying that on the front lines, what you're seeing is we're taking advantage of that. But the last question that I had for you, it's a question that I posed for a couple of our other guests, and that is, how do you think this profession is going to change permanently coming out of this pandemic? Any crystal ball gazing you'd like to do?
Well, I know there, I've looked at the series so far, it's been great. And even Norman and Mike and others have talked on the same topics that I really believe in. And we're starting to see, and that is we're transforming the profession from being an organization and profession that is very prescriptive, that is one that can adapt to the situation that's at hand. And the reason I say that is we've talked for many years about data scientists being in teams, other specific skill sets. And we can bring those to bear today to assist the organization. There's a lot of controversy. We can debate, should this be a second line or a third line? We don't do the second line. But I think it's important. We need to be relevant and help the business. We can work through the questions of independence and objectivity. Obviously, those are forefront, and we need to think about those. But we now have the capabilities to deliver things that maybe we've not been looked to in the past. And I think that's the exciting opportunity for us going forward as members of our profession.
Thanks, Brian. I couldn't agree with you more. You and I were talking a little bit before we got started, and we were talking about that internal auditors were traditionally sort of referred to as bean counters. This is one of those eras where we better be willing to pick up the tools and actually help cultivate the beans. Otherwise, there's not going to be any harvest in the future.
Yeah, Richard, you and I've talked many times in the past. I think our profession as we go on forward, we're going to see positions like analysts, like we see within organizations. It's going to attract a lot of young people with bright opportunities, touching things we've never done in the past. As someone that is very accountable to where we're heading, I'm excited for them, and I'm excited for us as well.
Brian Christensen, thank you for being with me today. And more importantly, thank you for your dedication to our profession. A lot of folks in your position are often just so busy. The demands on them are so much that they really don't have the time to give back to the profession through the IIA that you have. And we really value the work that you do.
Great. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. I'm Richard Chambers, President and CEO of the Institute of Internal Auditors.